Hello and welcome back to Inside the Tank. I'm your host, Tyler Rains, and welcome back to another episode, the final episode of the 2022-23 OHL season. Now, I will say in advance that this is going to be a little bit of a longer episode because we are going to be, number one, recapping the Steelheads playoff run, and number two, also recapping the regular season as well. So, without further ado, I want to get into this because this was one that I don't think anybody was expecting. So we'll go with the regular season first. So at the beginning, the Steelheads had such an impressive first part of the regular season, right before up till the Christmas break. This was a team that a lot of people were writing off last season, that were saying that, you know, they were not going to go anywhere. They weren't really going to do anything, that these guys were basically toast. And a lot of people were writing them off and saying that, you know, just because they lost to Hamilton the season before, that they were going to be a first-round exit team. And that, you know, some of them said they might not even make the playoffs. And they proved everybody wrong within that first stretch, I think. They were first place in the league for, 13, 14 games. And they played like nobody else could have played. Owen Beck was firing off. Luca Del Bel-Belluz was having a stellar season, just like he was the season before. Ethan Del Mastro was great on the back end. James Hardy was playing probably the best that I've ever seen him play. There were so many great, incredible things about that team in the first half of the season, and they looked unstoppable. So that in itself was a great moment, and we had a lot of fun, talking about those teams and talking about how the players were doing so well, were really defying expectations, to be honest. Then came right before Christmas, they started to slow down a bit, and there was a little bit of doubt. They weren't sure. The fans weren't sure, more like that this team would make the playoffs. And it started to get really rough, really kind of tough to take in. And it started to get a little bit more painful because they weren't winning like they were before. So I'm not sure what happened. Maybe something went wrong. We'll never know. We'll never know what happened. But it started to get a little bit rough. The waters started to get a little bit rough. And that was the point where I think the decision was made that you got to trade off, that you weren't going to contend this season, because there was just that divide, I think. And that was a pretty good decision, I must say, because they took guys who, Ethan Del Mastro was likely not going to be back next year. Luca Del Bel-Belluz was likely going to be playing for the Cleveland Monsters. And Owen Beck, he was the last cut out of Montreal's training camp, so he was going to make the team next year regardless. So they decided to sell these guys off and get better assets, get players that were going to be with the team for a long period of time, that would help them go on a deep playoff run. And they also got a ton of draft picks as well that is really going to help them build up the team, build up that back end, build up the offense, and build around the goalies, which you've done such a great job of developing already. Ryerson Leanders has just blown everybody out of the water, and we'll talk about him and Alessio Bellieri in just a little bit. But then came the deadline, when I think a lot of people were shocked, maybe a little bit of disappointment, and some excitement. I know I myself, full disclosure, I wasn't super, super excited when I found out that Beck, Delbel, and Del Mastro were traded. Just me being, of course, from my diehard fan side of things, it sucked to see that. But on the other side, I was open to that change because I saw the way that they were playing. It looked like they weren't comfortable out there. It looked like, they weren't playing the way that they're used to playing. So something had to change. And, sure enough, once they brought in Jack Van Volsen, Angus McDonnell, Porter Martone, this team almost did like a complete 180 almost. They weren't anywhere close to where they were before at the beginning of the season, that dominance that they once had, but they were still playing very well despite being a young team who hasn't really found their rhythm or hadn't found their rhythm for a little while. And it looked like they were going to do some damage. And sure enough, they did. They were playing unreal. Angus McDonnell, I think his first 5 or 10 games with Mississauga, he had 15 points. Porter Martone around the same. Jack Van Volsen was doing pretty good. Justin Dezodi as well. I didn't mention him. He's been phenomenal. And I know a lot of people are probably going to say the same thing. He's been a sneakily underrated forward. Very, very underrated. And when it comes to diagnosing the depth and what the Steelheads have, Dezodi's a really good piece. I think that Van Volsen is going to turn into a top 6 forward. You had the regulars. Luke Misa was popping off. Xander Vecchia had a career year. These guys did very, very well. Despite selling off at the deadline, they looked incredible. And this new youth movement looked like nothing we've ever seen before. Then came the end of the regular season. They struggled a little bit. They lost their last 3 games, or their last 2 games, rather, and they were going into the playoffs. Now, at this point, I was hearing a lot of chatter from the fans, at least around the arena, that were just like, oh, we're toast. We're going into a series against a second-seeded team. We're toast. We're not going to be able to do anything. We're going to get swept. And I didn't think so. I thought at the beginning it was a little bit of a nightmare because you're going up against North Bay. They're the second-seeded team. Like I said, you struggled against them a little bit during the regular season, and it was tough, but you also put up some good fights. And sure enough, so they go into game 1. They get demolished 5-1. And I think everybody at that point was just like, yeah, saw that coming and whatever, right? But that was, I think, the first game that they really kind of sat there and said, are we going to let ourselves be taken down by this team, or are we going to rebel? Second game, they won 4-3. Beautiful, full, complete win. That was the biggest win of the series up to that point. And sure enough, they would get another one. But game 3, they come back. It's a Tuesday night game. Weird scheduling for the playoffs. A Tuesday night and a Wednesday night for these guys back to back in the middle of the week. So North Bay comes in. They beat them on Wednesday night. Mississauga has a lights out game. On Tuesday night. Mississauga has a lights out game on Wednesday night, and I think was arguably their best win of the series. And they tied it at 2 apiece. At that point, I was thinking to myself, the battalion should be scared. They should be really scared. And there were so many people that were in their seats that I heard them say, I wasn't expecting this team to be this good and play against North Bay so well. And I was kind of thinking that too, because I knew that they were going to be great. I knew that this team that they had it in them. But to tie the series against a team who was the second place team, who had beaten you almost all season long, you tied up that series. And you made it look good. That right there is an impressive achievement. So you go into game 5. They get absolutely demolished. It was 6-0. That was a game that I did the episode that night, and I was just thinking, you know what? It wasn't even over. The game wasn't even over, and it was over. It was 5-0 when I started recording the episode, and then it was 6-0 final. That game was tough. You know, it's a Friday night game in North Bay. They were getting out-cheered. They were getting outshot. They were getting outplayed basically the whole game. They started rough. They took that dumb penalty. It's those early penalties at the beginning of the game. And that's what cost them. So they roll into game 6 on Sunday afternoon. End of the first period, it's 5-1. And the energy from everybody is gone. The fans, you know, the players, you could see that they were just beaten down and broken. North Bay just kept pressing on. And then the Steelheads got one back. The energy started to come back. They got another one. The energy started to come up again. Then it was the third period. They scored another one. And then another one. It was 5-4. And if they had another probably 2 minutes, they would have been able to tie this up, send this to overtime, and without a doubt in my mind, they would have gone to 7 and probably won this series. Because the way that they played in that game 6, despite going down 5-1 in the first period, they came back, almost came back, but they made this game 5-4. After being down 5-1 in the first period, they made this game 5-4. That's dedication. They just didn't have enough time. That's all it was. It was too little too late. That's all it was. For a team like this to take it to 7 games, or to 6 games, against a team who arguably was probably going to finish either first or second in the league regardless, that just shows you how amazing this team truly is. Because the only 3 players that were over 18 years old, the only players that were over 18 years old on this current team, Chaz Sharp, James Hardy, Casper Larson, and Charlie Callahan. Everybody was either 18 or younger from that point and didn't have a whole lot of experience. You tell me that a team that can tie up a series and send it to 6 games against a North Bay Battalion team that's stacked up the chips, I think you got to give them a pat on the back for that one. Because regardless, despite the fact that they didn't end up winning the series, it is what it is. I'm proud of them for just going as far as they did. They may not have won the series. They may not have won a championship, but I'm proud of them for going as far as they are. And I know that when I was speaking to JR after the game, he said that, regardless of what place they finished in, he's proud of them for doing as best as they did. And I think there's a lot to be proud of. From the fan side of things, from the player side of things, you took a team that was in 7th place, the Mississauga Steelheads, and you took a team 6 games, the second seeded team in the Eastern Conference, 6 games. You should be proud of yourself, because that's something to build off for next year, and that's some revenge that you can get for next season. Just so impressive. And regardless, I think that it's so amazing. There's so much to be proud of on this team. And wow, there was so much emotion after that game with the overagers especially. As soon as that game 6 was over and the handshake lines were done, the fans were giving these guys a standing ovation. The players rushed over to the 3 OAs and just gave them a lot of hugs. And there was a lot of emotion on that ice. And I myself was there to witness that. It brought a tear to my eye, because that just shows truly how much these guys care about their teammates, especially the guys who have done so much for this organization. Charlie Callahan was an 8th round pick in, I believe it was 2018. Came onto this team, established himself as that top 4 defenseman, and quickly became a fan favorite. It's not every day that an 8th round pick gets to do that. Every time that I've interacted with him, it was always positive. He was always bringing a good amount of energy, and he was quite the funny guy. From what I gather from what his teammates were saying about him, he was pretty funny. I know that he was a jokester around the rink before pregame. He was always telling jokes and always, being goofy, goofing around with the boys and having a good time. His character is something that we're going to miss. Definitely. Casper Larson, the Great Dane. He came over. He was an import pick, came over from Denmark during the COVID year, which nobody was basically playing then. He came over during the COVID year and immediately made an impact his rookie season, which I guess classified as last season. Wow. What an incredible player. Just such a class act, and somebody who every single time that I've had an interaction with him, he was always smiling. He was always in a good mood. And again, brought both on and off the ice, he brought that presence that I think a lot of people are going to miss. And that's one guy who, Kasper Larsson, there's only one Great Dane. There's only one Kasper Larsson. And finally, James Hardy. Man, Mr. Steelhead, the captain of captains. There are so many things that I could say about him that, have been incredible. Same as the other three. Every single time that I've interacted with James, whether I was talking to him outside the rink, pregame, postgame, he's always willing to give his time. Always willing to do things for the community. He was always willing to give his time to do interviews. He was always somebody who just cared a lot about the community around the rink. He cared a lot about his teammates, and he just loved everything about this team. He put his heart and his soul into everything that he did, and that's something that will never be forgotten. He became the all-time leader in points, goals. He holds 11 franchise records right now for the Mississauga Steelheads. 11 franchise records. Previously held by Mikey McLeod, by the way. And Owen Tippett. He managed to break those records. He did. A record breaker, a true class act, somebody who was always very professional, and once again, just one of a kind, and is somebody who's going to be dearly missed around the rink. I know that there were so many people during those last minutes of the game, that were on their feet when they were leaving the ice, that were on their feet and just giving these three a standing ovation, which they very well deserved. And the impact that they had around the community in Mississauga is just, there's no way to put it into words. What happened during the playoffs, it doesn't matter. This team's got a lot to be proud of because they overcame obstacles, they set records, and they became stronger. Started, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. For the Steelheads team, though, there is a lot that is going to be done. There is still tons of work that's left to be done. Porter Martone, Angus McNadell, Luke Misa, Kai Schwint, Xander Vecchia. You can name every player on that roster, and I guarantee they're going to come back hungrier than ever this season. And they've got a chip on their shoulder. They've got something to prove, and they will prove it because we've seen them do this time and time again. The rookies are going into their second season. They are much wiser, much stronger, and they're going to be much more in shape than they were the season before. And this is going to be exciting. For those who were saying that this Steelheads team is going to be deadly in the years coming up, this is a championship team. Maybe not right off the bat, but with a little bit of additions to the team, a little bit more experience, this is going to be a championship that we can do this every single week. So with that being said, I'm going to take you into the final post game of the season, what happened, the interview with James Richmond, and what he had to say on this crazy, kind of incredible year. But until then, I will see you, the next time I see you is probably going to be in August during the OHL's preseason when the Steelheads are back in action. It's going to be a little bit of a crazy offseason, but I'm sure it's going to be worth it. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell notification for all future content, and don't forget to follow our social medias down below, and I will see you in the next one. So a very close game. It looked like the Steelheads gave it everything they got. Just your overall thoughts on the game and on the series as a whole.
We had a poor start to the game. First 12 minutes. We gave them too much. Maybe a little bit nervous, inexperienced. Showed early. But I'm pretty proud of them when we fought back. So.
Just at the end there, maybe this would have been the case with any old Rangers, but right away you saw guys going to Hardy and Callahan, especially. Maybe Larson as well, although those two guys I may have focused on a little bit more. We've seen it before. Those were heart and soul guys.
Yeah, I mean, they're lifers, right? Steelhead lifers. They started the junior career with us, and they're finishing it with us. You know, they gave us everything. I mean, Hardy set a whole bunch of records, scoring-wise. What we can't say about Chucky, right? I mean, he is all heart. Make the team after being an 8th-round pick in his first year making the team. At his size, everybody said he couldn't play. And he did more than just play. He was the leader, he was the captain, so it was pretty good. Casper, you know, he came over, he delayed his COVID and all that stuff, but he had a good run here in Mississauga.
That's what I was thinking too, was Casper especially. I think it was like a full year or two after he was drafted. He missed the COVID year, and I thought, like, you know, maybe there was more opportunities that could have opened here, but seemed pretty committed to join.
No, he was all on right away. So it was obviously because of my connection over there. He did live there for a long time. So, he was a great student. Hopefully he move on now to one of the pro teams.
Well, and all those guys in this series had a big contribution as well. Mostly with just the way that they held. Hardy scores in this one.
He hit the post at the end.
Yeah.
I think what you saw is a little bit of coming out party for a lot of our younger guys.
That's what I say.
You know, Martone, maybe McDonnell, Carmeras, Van Wolfs, Von Richter, Leaners, and that. They're 06s and 05s, and it's kind of crazy. That's what their guys just said to me, and the referee said to me. They're like, "Oh my God, this team's gonna be back for a few more years." Yeah, so it hurts right now, but you know, we'll have to start exit meetings and then start preparing for next year through the draft.
Definitely saw you guys raise your level second half of this game onwards. After game 4, like, as excited as you were, did you also get the sense that North Bay had another level they could climb to?
Oh, we knew that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you look at it, their goalie was the top player in the series on both teams, right? So when you get into playoffs, it's usually the best goalie's team that wins at any level, at the pro level and at this level. If your goalie, I mean, he made some saves there tonight in the second period. I couldn't believe they didn't go in. And when I looked at him on the iPad, I still couldn't believe they didn't go in. So it's, I thought we played, there was momentum swings throughout the whole series, right? But I thought our forwards did a good job of doing what we planned out, and our D did a good job. Then they got momentum, and they did a good job. So at the end of the day, it came down to their goalie being the best player in the series.
And in terms of
that's not to say our goalie didn't play
Absolutely.
well. Their goalie.
And in terms of how the series went, obviously a team like North Bay, the second seed in the East, finished off. You took them to 6 games. How proud of you are this group that you were able to do it?
You know, when you get in the playoffs, I'm not worried about where anybody's seated. You know, I think the Kings were the last seed the one year that they won the cup. So once you get in the playoffs, it's about preparing your team and trying to win that series, trying to win 4 games before the other team does. I'm really proud of all of our guys, you know, and proud of the 3 overages. But I'm really excited about, you know, our young group.
So a bit of optimism as you head off, as well as obviously a bit of a tough
optimism will
loss.
set in a couple days.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, not right now, but yeah, for sure.
And at the 7th overall pick coming up. I know you're best player available kind of thing, but you know, do you kind of look at what the team has going out and look at spots you might eventually want to fill with that role?
Yes. Well, who do we got on forward?
Yep.
Van Wilson, Carmeras, Martone, McDonnell, Misa, some high-end offensive guys up there.
We'll read from there. We'll read from there.
Yeah.
All right.
You've been doing it long enough. You read the room.
Can't get a direct answer. I get it.
Am I going to tell you who we're picking? No, because I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah, we hear all different things in front of us, right? So.
Yeah.
All right.